Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6 of You Can Feel It All Over. Today my special guest is Julia Jun. She's the executive director and founder of the Flatirons Food Film Festival, which takes place in Boulder, Colorado on October 10th to the 13th. Welcome, Julia. How's it going? Cheers.
Thanks for having me,
Yeah,
Keith.
excited to have you here. For those of you listening, Julia is also one of my friends, so it's always a pleasure for me to get to know a little bit more about my friends and what they do and what gets them excited about life.
And I only know you through music, so this is a different, sort of avenue.
Different format? Yeah, definitely. So why don't you tell us a little bit of a little history of the Flatirons Food Film Festival and how you got started, what it means to you and all that.
Absolutely. It's really funny. This is actually the number one question that people have is, how did this get started? And really, what happened was I was a big fan of the International Film Series at CU Boulder. And they've been around for over 70 years playing art house movies. And they just do almost a movie a night, for the fall and spring semesters. So I said, how can I help? And I think I was the only adult volunteer. And I just, I did some publicity and I was just thinking, what can I do more to make it kind of sparkly and get some attention? And I had this, kind of interest in both longstanding interest in food and film. And I had read that there were food film festivals in other places. And I thought, well, why not Boulder? I mean, Boulder has this strong, interest in food, definitely. Mm-hmm. And, really the container for this is film. So I was like, okay, let's do a food film festival. And so, I was really lucky in that, the director of the food film festival, Pablo Kilseth, really gave me the green light and let me, kind of put it all together myself. And I didn't get like a ton of university resources. In fact, that we weren't even affiliated with the university or anything else. It was just like, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And so then it was like, well, how do you do this? Well, you need some money and you need to, choose some films and you need to figure out how to get the rights to show the films. Then you have to get the word out and have, different kinds of things that help with that, like posters and programs for, when people get there so they can say, oh, it was, such and such. And that was the name of the movie. I really liked it. And so I just kind of set about doing that. And I was, once again, lucky, lots of people I knew who are interested in food who are willing to help. And so that's kind of how it all started to happen.
That's super cool. I love hearing this because it's like, I know in my own little creative world, I know that there's constant little seeds of ideas that pop up, right? And then it's like, well, do I chase those? Do I try to bring that to light? So so was it just really just you? Like you were getting involved in the CU stuff and then all of a sudden you were like, man, I got this idea. And then you just went for it, like without any really clue of like what went into it and everything.
That's exactly it.
That's awesome.
It was, well, it's kind of funny though.
I love it.
It's modeled a little bit on the Telluride, film festival because I go there every year and I love it. And so what their format is they have these, films and, and then they have people involved in the films who actually introduce the films.
Yeah.
And they have activities and you're like, boy, this is the best thing in the world. And so I wanted the food film festival to sort of be the best in the world. And so I decided we're going to have a speaker for every film, even if they aren't involved with the film, just like Telluride. Yeah. And we're going to have things that really enrich the experience, like culinary activities that are related to the films as well.
That's awesome.
And in many ways, that's the core formula of even today's festival.
That's so cool. Yeah, I volunteered with Dan, our buddy, our mutual friend. Yeah. Greetings, Mr. Dan Harris, if you're listening to this. We volunteered to play music, and I thought right from the beginning, because, I'm a big fan of food, which I love movies and film, and I thought it was super cool. And I was super impressed how you had it in different areas. And I haven't been able to go every year because sometimes with gigs get in the way and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I respect you a lot, and I think that's super cool that you're able to just go for it and watch the process unfold.
Well, we've been steadily kind of incorporating other artistic disciplines, and we haven't put as much effort into music as I'd like. Mm-hmm. So I think this year before for our reception before Psalm 3, which is a wine film, we're going to have a jazz, I think there are going to be a quartet.
Oh, nice.
But that's the only live music, and I'd really like to have more live music. And it's just this sense of, well, like, how do I actually fit it in? How do I get the time to make this happen is always the question.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because everything takes time, like you think of it, and then it's like, now how do I reach out to all these different musicians? I think you did a great job pairing wine film stuff with jazz band. I don't think you can go wrong with a quartet and wine. And it's really cool that you did that, because you really do bring a good point about, Boulder, Colorado, and this whole area. I mean, people, I always think it's like this interesting blend of like your health conscious people with also your food cultural people. And we have like the farmers market, there's so much that's surrounded around food, and we're so fortunate to have all these different types of nationalities and cuisines and everything all over the place. And then people also are a super educated town and place, so like people want to get out and do that. What was it like? What was the first one like for you? I mean, as far as like opening weekend, here we are, boom, it's about to hit.
I think it was shorter than it was now. I think it was Friday through Sunday.
Okay.
Now we're Thursday through Sunday. And at times we've been we've been Wednesday through Sunday. I think, Thursday through Sunday is probably more manageable than some of the other configurations. And now I'm just greedy for films.
Yeah.
So now when I think about a 3D festival, I'm like, that's not enough time. That's not enough time for films. And actually, I have this vision. So I apply for these arts grants, and they ask you questions, and sometimes they, the people who are looking at the grants give you comments, and they want you to respond. So this year, the question was, what is your 3-year plan? And I never think like that. I never think 3 years, 5 years, whether it's personally or in terms of festivals. So that was really challenging.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I think I want more films. And then I had to think about, how do I make this work?
Yeah.
And so my philosophy always have been that the film should be accessible. And not only, I keep the prices low, but also you should be able to see every film. So the only way to do that is to break one of those rules, which is you should be able to see every film. The only way to actually do more films in the same amount of time is to have, concurrent venues playing different things.
Well, that's kind of a good little segue. So where exactly, if people are watching this and they're like, man, I'd love to check out some of these shows, where can they go get tickets? And then can you explain a little bit about, I think you were saying there were 3 different venues, places for movies.
Most of the shows are at the Boulder Public Library. And most of it is in the theater, but we are adding a new lecture series this year. And so those are in the Boulder Creek Room in the library to kind of keep it all together.
Oh, cool.
And so most of them are at the library, but also we have a shorts program at E-Town Saturday afternoon. And there's going to be Snarf sandwich slices.
Ooh.
That'll make everybody happy. And then, Sunday is always our day at the International Film Series at Munziger Auditorium on the CU Boulder campus.
Cool.
And so tickets, the easiest way to get them is online. So you can go to our website, www.flatironsfoodfilmfest.org, and it'll give you all the information about everything we're doing. Plus, there are all these links for tickets. We have our tickets. We do that through Eventbrite. And then, of course, you can always show up at the door.
Okay, cool. And all these links, for those of you listening at home and we're watching this, on the YouTube page, there'll be all of Julia's links, so you can go and do a little research, see what you want to check out, and also all the information if you want to purchase tickets and how to do that. And we also have these cool little flyers she's put together. So, yeah, this is exciting. So what was it? So this is also The other component to this is it's a nonprofit. Is that right?
We are a nonprofit. We're actually a 501c3 nonprofit. So that really helps with a lot of things. I mean, helps with grant writing just because it's really hard to, go for grants if you're not. Helps with fundraising for, corporate sponsorship and, big patrons and all of that. And really it expresses who you are. I mean, it expresses who we are. We're not here to make money. That was never the intent. The intent really was a gift to the public, to let them, something that's entertaining and educational and, everything like that.
That's cool. And it sounds like what's great too is the nature of the film festival is like everybody can get something out of it. Like I'm not a parent, but if I was a parent, I'd be psyched because I could like go pick things I think were interesting, get my kids involved. Kids love food, and it just seems like it's so cool because it's something for everybody. And I think it's really cool how you frame that as it's like a gift for everyone too. That's beautiful. That's a cool thing.
For kids, we always do a free children's program. Nice. And I think somebody who was involved in it last year wanted to call it a family program. And I think it's true, but somehow it's easier to get across when you say children's program. And so this year we're doing something that's really related to the festival. I mean, everything always is, but it's a filmmaking workshop.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we're gonna, have actually, as subjects, food from our sponsor, at least one sponsor that kids could take home with them, like, some fruit that they could maybe film a little bit and, go, oh yeah, this looks really good. I'm going to take it home to mom.
Nice. Can a 42-year-old man take the film festival? I mean, kind of a man-child, I guess, I'd love to learn about that. And people listening can also look on the FlatironSFoodFilmFest.org for information about the children's.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
All
Cool.
of the programs, lectures, the films, the speakers.
That's cool.
Absolutely all of it.
Just out of curiosity, with finding the films, is it kind of like throughout the year? Once the festival ends, you're kind of like, what's your process in finding films you want to show? Like, how do you go about?
Well, okay, I have this kind of electronic notepad, and every year I have 19 films, and I put different films in them as I sort of catch wind, and I have all the information that I can find at the time. And often I need to go and find more information to actually really make a connection with the people who are controlling rights to the film. And first, before that even happened, you have to be able, you need to preview the film. So you need to be able to write to these people and say, hey, I'm part of this film festival. I'd really like to, preview your film to evaluate, for us. And you're right. It actually happens through most of the year. And cool. Yes, after the festival ends, I think I need a little vacation a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
But, pretty soon after that, I start going. And it has a lot to do with both things that I've been squirreling away by reading media or talking to people, and they say, oh, you really ought to check out this film. As well as looking at other, film festivals that have food programs or are food film festivals. And so going, oh, this exists and that sounds great.
Oh, cool.
And then I start contacting, all of those, kind of distributors or producers and directors to get permission to take a look. And, and it's kind of, so the way it works in terms of, I'm trying to do a really broad view of food every year.
Yeah. So
it's really hard to have a theme. All of that happens sort of accidentally, and it usually only affects some of the festival because, to have a broad festival, you can't have a theme that works with everything. But there are certain cornerstones. So I am always trying to program political film because I think food politics it's really important.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree.
And then I'm trying to actually program an agriculture film or something that sort of fits into that spectrum, because that's where the food comes from. So, and for me, how those school gardens have been a big thing in the last 10 or 15 years.
Oh yeah, yep.
I had a school garden when I was a kid. And it really does open your eyes up to the miracle of like, of just miracle of like things that grow. I mean, you grow food, it's like every day it's like, oh, it's a little bigger, or, now there's a little bud on that. And then it's like, oh, there's a tomato and it's ripe. And so
like lots of ripe tomatoes coming in from the garden right now. Yeah, not to cut you off, but like that's a really good, at the school I work at, because I do middle school counseling by day in Arvada, during our lunch duty, we have a huge school garden that one of the teachers did a grant, or the principal did a grant for. And it's super cool. Like I always, when I'm out on lunch duty, I'm like, who wants a free tour of the garden? And it's cool to see like kids, everyone from A to Z. Like it doesn't matter if you're like the cool kid who thinks he's a badass versus like the more sensitive kids. They're all in there, and it's like it's really cool to see their faces when you're like kind of what you were saying. Like all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, that yellow squash, that was that little thing like last week. This is so cool, And then it's really cool to see how they come alive, and it really is important.
It's very important. So yeah, it sort of followed me where I was a vegetable gardener for a long time, and I've been, I think I'd been going to the farmer's market in Boulder for like 30 years or something, a long time. I moved to Boulder, and then it was like, woohoo, farmer's market.
Yeah.
And when I lived in Boston, Faneuil Hall has like a market, but none of it is like from the farmers.
Yeah.
I don't even know. It was just like disappointing. So this is actually food from people that you meet.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing. And the food is, the produce is immaculate, and people are passionate about what they're, growing or making. And so, yeah, I have a real connection to that. So I'm happy actually to book, films related to agriculture in some way or another.
Yeah. I don't know I can't remember the exact details, but a couple of years ago, I went to Munzinger at night and saw the one about soil. And honestly, even for me being a crunchy dude who loves gardening and all that, I mean, I still remember a lot from that, and that was pretty influential, And that was the same year that I got to meet one of my fermenting gurus, Mr. Sandor Katz. I thought that was super cool.
It was actually at that program where you met him.
Yeah.
And we did a fermented food fair beforehand.
Yep, that was great.
And I have a gift for you. It
You
has
do?
something to do with that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So here.
Thank you so much. There we go. There's the man, the myth, the legend, Sandor Katz. I'll never forget. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. That's so cool.
He's the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
It's just, it was such a pleasure.
That's cool. That really means a lot. That'll be up here soon. Yeah. So Sandor, he wrote a book. You might jump in if I get any of this stuff wrong. So about 11 years ago, I was at Cure Farm Stand.
Oh.
And I was more into like making pickles from the garden, like vinegar-based pickles. And so I would go, and it's always kind of like whatever I'm growing, kind of supplement it with farm pickles or farm cucumbers. And I talked to this girl, and she's like, "Oh, are you making like half sours?" I mean, I grew up in New Jersey. I never knew that half sours were like fermented. I didn't even think about it. So she got me into like sauerkraut and explaining all the like fermenting foods was all about. And I was like, oh, this is super cool. And then she was like, yeah, Sandor Katz's book, and Wild Fermentation, I think it's called.
That's
right?
exactly what it's called.
And the way, like, I'm always super impressed by people who can write and who can make connections. So what I thought was super cool, and it still is an impact on me, is like how he kind of reference culture, like cultures that you're creating in the environment when you're fermenting food, and how that's connected to world cultures. And I always thought that was super cool, and the importance of culture and everything. And it's always like I'm a blender and a synthesizer. Like I like to learn all these different things and then figure out how to like blend and mash together things, for better or worse. But I thought that was super cool and was such a big impact. So when I got to meet him, like that's just one of those things in life you just never think you're gonna do. you know, but then you were like, he's going to be there. I was like, this is amazing.
So, you know, he actually did a series of short films about fermentation in China that we played. You know, we did the whole series of films, and it was really great. He did it with Mara King, who was, you know, with Azuke. And, you know, she was there with her mom. So it was really kind of personal at the same time of like getting into all these different fermentation kind of techniques and foods that are like, oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
So different. So did you get a chance to see that?
I didn't see those. I saw the book came with a DVD on like a workshop he did, and that kind of got me fired up and gave me the basics of how to ferment food. And then I've watched a couple. It's been so long, but I've watched a couple of short videos where I think he's on a commune in Tennessee or something.
Yep, exactly. But these films came out later than the program that you attended.
Yeah, so I haven't seen those yet.
Oh, they're so good.
Nice.
You should watch them. They're so good.
What are the names of them? Do you remember?
I don't remember. But I penned some kind of title for the series about like People's Republic of Fermentation or something like that. It's a very long title, and then I kind of regretted it later because it's long.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Well, I think this would be a good segue. We'll take a little break. I know you said you had something creative you prepared that you wanted to do. So this would be a good segue to go into that. And I think ultimately when we come back for the next interview segment, I think would be really cool. And you and I kind of touched base on this where we're making espresso brought to you by Ozo Coffee. Cheers to Justin Hartman. I think the connection I like to see, and maybe we can talk more about it when we come back, is the diversity. Like this night when I met Sandor was also the same night I watched the Soil documentary, I believe. Like so the diversity of what you do is really cool, but I know we touched base earlier on the importance of culture and diversity too and its influence. So I think that would be a good, nice little chit chat to have when we come back. All right?
All right.
Miss Julia Jun will now recite the Flatirons Food Film Festival mission statement.
To celebrate food culture and community by hosting a series of films and events intended to entertain, educate, and inspire. You have a photo of Leonardo.
Leonardo da Vinci, yep.
Oh, did you go to the exhibition?
I did.
Oh, it was good.
I thought you liked it too?
Yeah, I did like it. It's not art oriented, but it was still very interesting.
Yeah, I would have liked to gone again because by the time I got to the Mona Lisa exhibit, I had like learning fatigue. And then there was like some guy who was just like really loud who was like, "Do you think she's staring at you? What do you think he's doing?" And I was like, "Dude, just shut up." You know what I mean? Like in my head, everyone's just looking at this guy and he's just like, and granted, he's probably with his grandkids who are teenagers and even they're, you know, so maybe he was trying to connect with them, but they were in like, you know. Yeah, I like to go to see, it's always interesting to me how I don't really like the term genius. I mean, I definitely think he was like super hip and had great ideas, but I also think that he put a lot of time and sacrificed a lot of stuff. Like you don't, with artists and stuff, you only see snapshots of what they've done and like through their drawings, their music, through like whatever, you know. And there's not denying that some people have like different natural abilities a little bit more than others, but there's also like what people don't see is the amount of time people put into these things. Like Leonardo da Vinci, it's like, man, this dude, to be able to come up with that much output, I mean, I think he was just super into all this stuff, and you know, he's probably sacrificed relationships, social stuff, and just to be able to kind of pursue what was in his head and what he wanted to do. And
he was visionary in a way that most people haven't been. It was really impressive.
But even to take the stuff that it's kind of like in your world we were talking about earlier, where you're like, I got the seed of an idea. Yeah. It could have just stayed up in there, and that's what I mean. Like by time, like at some point you were like, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and then it's this learning process. And I think with like Leonardo, it's the same thing. Like, sure, he had all these ideas, but he took time to work through them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean. We don't see the time,
of course,
that he put into
practice.
the practice and all that stuff. Yeah, and that's what always bothers me. Like I don't deny that guy was super smart and had a if he was in public education in this day and age, he'd probably be in the GT program. But it's just always like it bothers me when people discredit the amount of time and the practice that goes into it and working through things.
No, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, that's a good little way to jump into things. So before our little break there, we were talking about cultures and fermentation. And you and I had briefly talked in the kitchen about diversity in culture and food and what it means to you. So I thought it'd be a good little wrap to have right now.
Well, I guess you can take it a lot of different ways. But it's really funny. Each festival has its own sort of thrust and focus, and there's never a theme because there are so many films, and I really want to present a broad picture of food, but there are always a couple of films that come together and really speak together at once. And so we have a whole bunch of, international films that, as well as international cuisine that have come together. I think because of this day and time, they just seem right. Not only, is it a matter of my looking at this film and going, aha, this is great, this is for the festival. It's also, I think, I'm thinking in the back of my mind of here we are and what's actually relevant right now. And so right now, I think that, immigrants have a lot to do with what's happening right now, and that's really relevant to me as the child of immigrants. And I've grown up with Korean cuisine all my life, and it really is a springboard. These are people who are so into food. The Koreans are just nuts about food, and that's what you find out the more you learn about them right now. They have a vibrant food culture, and so yeah, that's part of my being interested in food, I think. So yeah, immigrant sort of cuisine and how it's informed this country. Well, you can always say, yeah, there are people here, and it's really true, and their cuisine is important. But you can also say that it's a layer. The American cuisine is layered, sort of cuisines that have come in, and we love pizza, and we love sushi, and we love Indian food, and so it's that melting pot of food. And so we're actually opening the festival with 2 episodes from The Migrant Kitchen, which is an Emmy award-winning public television series, and they're 30-minute films, and one is about Japanese cuisine and izakaya, which is sort of pub food, and then another is Jewish deli food, and we're gonna have this intermission in between where there's tastes of both, and you have a little bit of hard cider with like Boko cider. They're gonna be there actually sampling cider, but the films themselves are really great, and so really. I didn't know exactly how to treat this when I watched the films. I just went, these films are great, but we always do feature films. And then I thought, I really like these films, and they're really relevant now. So we're gonna do this thing a little differently, and we're gonna have this intermission, and it's gonna be fun. So that's what we're opening with. But there's more. There's more. And I got these films that were. From overseas, and one of them is from Morocco, and it's about a boy who wants to become a French chef. Oh, cool. And the other is an African romantic comedy, and I loved it, and I thought, well, when are you going to see an African romantic comedy? Like, never, right?
Yeah.
And so the connection with food for that is is this single mother who's entered into this televised chef contest in Harare, which is like, oh, Harare, it's so different. And then so familiar at the same time because the world becomes smaller and smaller. And it's good to see some views of Harare and think, oh, wow, they're in some ways, it's very similar. And so that was cool. And I just thought, oh, this is really good. this is really, it's fun with your sort of windows into other cultures. And, two of these films are, a drama and romantic comedy. And we always like those films, they draw people in. And so I'm always up for a good, fiction, good story film.
Yeah.
We do lots of documentaries. There are a lot more documentaries than anything else. And so to find some good ones is like, yes.
That's great. That's super cool. It's always, in kind of relation to what you're saying, I went to Santa Fe on kind of like it was intended to be a visual arts expedition, but I can't remember the exact name of the place. I think it's the International Folk Art Museum down there. And
I think I've been there.
Yeah.
Do they have all these little figures?
Yeah. So at first I was kind of bummed because I was like, oh, I was hoping to get like paintings and all those stuff. But then like the biggest thing I learned, because I love culture and arts and food and music and all this stuff. And the coolest thing I thought, because the way they set it up is you have all these different little scenes, like little wooden figures, like all international from, Japan, Czechoslovakia, all these different places. And I thought what was the coolest thing was like in every scene was built around food. Like, and then eventually I got to the point I'm like, all right, where are my musicians at? Boom, they're there, so it was like great to see, like, it was like farmers market scenes, and just scenes from like modern day till probably like all the way up to like 1,000 years ago. And it was just so cool to think, like, I know maybe it's just cool to me and people are like, Summers, we already know all this stuff. But like, it's just cool to think like, wow, it's always been like culture's always been built off of food, music, and art. Hands down.
Well, that's how actually you create peace on some level, I think. And it's how people come together. Yeah. It's traditionally how people come together through like all three of those things.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny, it's like, and then I started thinking like, wow, we like, it's no different today. I mean, maybe we have like the ability to do this with iPhones and stuff, and we can do digital art and all this different stuff. But realistically, the same basic the underlying principles are always there. And that's why I'm real grateful to grow up. I think I'm second generation American. My dad's side is from Scotland, and my mom's side is from Italy and Czechoslovakia. And and having grown up in the East Coast, food is New Jersey, like 45 minutes outside of New York. It's diversity. I mean, like my childhood is like smells. Like we had like our neighbors were Eastern Indian, so they always had Indian foods. They'd all be out smoking cigarettes in their saris, and and then like my friends that were Mexican, I'd go there and it was like I just smell all the different foods. And I remember my parents, and like language and dialect, and still to this day I love all that stuff. And I was geeking out watching UFC fights last night. That was in Mexico City, and just listening to like the rhythm of the language and the dialect, the sharp sounds versus the soft sounds, and just I don't know, all that stuff to me is just so beautiful.
Oh, I forgot one other international sort of film, which is, and because Mexico made me think of it. So we have Diana Kennedy, who's this culinary legend, who's, this British woman in her 90s. And, she started to really get into Mexican food. And so she became one of the foremost researchers into authentic, regional cuisine. And she was just all over the place. She'd go into a farmer's market and, actually ask women there about how they made such and such dish. Wherever she could find these authentic dishes, she actually, got into it. And of course, through that, she wrote these cookbooks of Mexican cooking that are really seen as really important, in the Mexican food kind of canon. And so there's a new documentary about her, Diana Kennedy. I think it's called Nothing Fancy, Diana Kennedy. And so this is our big Saturday night program. We always do a big Saturday night
Nice.
program.
I can go to that. Yes.
And so, one year we had, the late Jonathan Gold, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning, restaurant critic for the LA Times. Encyclopedic knowledge of food, and just really interesting. He was quite a figure, and we were lucky to have him.
That's great.
And then the next year we had Jeremiah Tower, who was, there in on the local food with, I think he was a chef with Alice Waters way back in the day as Chef Panisse. And so he was one of those first people going to farms and, getting the best of everything and, all of that. And he was an important figure. And he was, God, he's British and he was very charming.
Oh, that's cool.
And and then last year, our Saturday night program was our tribute to Anthony Bourdain.
Okay.
And so we had a whole reception. And these Saturday night programs are they always have this big spread, which is the reason they're actually a lot more expensive than our movies. Because we have, beer, we have booze, we have last year it was a street food reception.
Nice.
And so that was really fun. And so we did a film we really liked, Babette's Feast, which was a feast just to watch. Mm-hmm. And it was an Academy Award winner a long time ago. It was really good to see it again. Mm-hmm. And we had some people actually who worked with him. And you found out he's exactly who he seemed like. He was a generous guy. He had a lot of character. Everything that you saw on the screen is kind of what you got.
Yeah.
And so this year it's all about Diana Kennedy, and I thought she'd be fascinating, but I was a little worried about having someone over 90 to take care of.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if somebody falls, at that age, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's really
Could
not
open a can of worms. You're like, what was I thinking? Is she pretty fit or what's?
She might be, but having known people in their 80s, I started to get really aware of how fragile people can be.
Yeah,
and
because the body starts to.
Mm-hmm.
But how cool is that though? That you have somebody who's 90 who has all this
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how valuable is that too? This world cult, all this experience this person's going to bring. Super cool,
So instead,
we
have, this Mexican-American chef, Claudette Zepeda, who was a contestant on Top Chef Denver. And then
I see, okay.
She's a James Beard semifinalist. The truth is, the reason I invited her wasn't because she was on Top Chef Denver. It was because she was in this article in the New York Times with her, her new restaurant at that point in San Diego, El Jardin. And it was just fascinating what she was doing. She was really putting together both authentic Mexican culture and then really creative twists that made a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of care in the food. Nice. And so we're also showing a Migrant Kitchen episode all about her in that restaurant. And
this is super cool.
So she's going to actually be talking about the film, and then there's going to be a discussion, about the film. And she's also going to be talking at one of our lectures about the global influences of Mexican cuisines.
Nice.
Apparently, there's these things like the comal is used in the Middle East as well.
Okay.
And
these connections. That's great.
It definitely, I thought that was fascinating. And she's going to be talking as well on our shorts program on Saturday, 12:30 at E-Town. In front of actually that short film I'm talking, a 30-minute episode about her and that restaurant. So
this is cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting.
That's awesome. And again, people want to find out more information with Julia Junn here, from the executive director and founder of the Flatirons Food Film Festival, posted right here. All the information can be found on flatironsfoodfestival.org.
Nope.
No?
No.
Apparently not.
It's flatironfoodfilmfest.org.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
But don't worry about that. All the links will be posted on the YouTube page where you'll be watching this video, and also if you're seeing this off of Facebook, there'll be a link there as well. That's super cool. I'm super excited, and I'm getting super hungry. This is gonna be great. I think it's great that it's great to be able to share your passion with the community, and that's what this show is all about, is getting people who are doing cool things to me, it's all art-based and culture-based, and what a cool thing. Have you watched this how many years, what year is this?
This is year 7.
Year 7. Have you watched it? Has it been growing?
It's absolutely been growing. It's really insane how much it's been growing. So I told you that, year 1, we have this core format, but we've also added to it, we have short films now for every feature film. And yeah, as I said, this year we have lectures, we have, art that's inspired by the films.
Nice.
Yeah, it's always been growing, definitely.
Nice. And what just out of curiosity, what's been, I know for me it's the same, there's a lot of processes is where I'm like, I'm going to do this, like even like doing something like this little talk show. It's just been like it's been a total like, wow, I can't believe I did that in the beginning. Like the whole process of learning. What have been some of the harder lessons you've had to learn? Or like, it doesn't have to be hard, like hard lessons or whatever, surprising
lessons.
or anything you would do differently?
Well, fundraising is always difficult. That's for sure. And it has to happen, that there's no way to do this without, actually funding. And so we're always looking for funding. And I always think if we only had, enough money, we could do more.
Yeah.
We don't have a staff. It means that it kind of takes over your life.
Yeah.
And it's always going to take over your life. But, then you're like, oh, but I can't get this done, or I can't get everything done at once. And that's really disappointing, because then you could be doing a better job. You could be reaching more people. You could be presenting more programs or incorporating other disciplines. There's all kinds of things that could happen if, you had more money. More funding, because then you can have more people and, all of that. We don't have a staff. We could really use a staff.
How many people altogether are with you on this to work?
Well, I think it's less than 10 on an ongoing basis, and I'd like to change that. I'd love to have volunteers who would like to be involved throughout the year. It would really help a lot. But then we have a whole slew of people willing to step in for, individual programs and help with them. And, that's a really great thing. I have a good board, we could use more people, but it's like that. We're just kind of, we're small but mighty. And I wish we could be like, a little, a little bigger.
A little mightier.
Yeah, a little bigger, a little mightier.
Yeah.
So, getting corporate sponsorships is always hard. I've, kind of gone into grants, and I think that's what's been saving us is just this whole thing about getting into grants. But grants are hard, but they're good. So grants actually make you think of like, what else could I be doing? They pose questions and make you think about, well, yeah, okay, how am I going to do this? What else am I going to add? Let's think about diversity. And it's when you're not thinking about diversity because you're just trying to get something going. And so those have been good, but the big downside of it is that they're really hard and they suck your brain out.
Yeah. I think a lot about with the town of Lafayette. I'd like to be able to, I have these big ideas of like, I think it's South Public Road. I think it's an art-based town. And I'm like, man, how can I figure out a way to get like the community, say, to have like a weekly jazz trio that is funded, that they don't have to pay for. They don't have to pay for the musicians, but like, and also the musicians, maybe they're all getting $100 a piece, like $300 for the whole pay. It's just 3 musicians, say, but it's a grant that somehow does that. But it's kind of exactly what you were saying that turns me off. What is like, I don't even know where to start, first of all, but then it's like, man, it's just a lot of work.
There is an arts grant that I just did like 2 or 3 weeks ago for the city of Lafayette for their arts commission.
Oh, cool.
And it isn't that hard compared to other grants that I do. So yeah, you just have to be clear about your concept. You have to, and the details, like how much will it cost and why, like all the things that go into that, and who's going to help with that, what venue is going, all the details essentially.
Yeah, what I'd love to see in town, and again, here's these seeds, and it's like, am I going to water that and let it grow, or am I just going to let it stay dormant for a while? So it's staying dormant, but I think what would be really cool is music-wise, is to create like, maybe one place there's like, a bluegrass band, and then another place there's like a jazz band, kind of make it so, because right now in Lafayette's super cool because we've got growth going on, we've got different ages coming in now, so it's like there's a wide spectrum of people who like different things. It's that want to go out. I think
we could collaborate, and it would be fun. Yeah. And I can help you with the grant, and we could actually both work on different ends of the grant, Because part of this is always trying to figure out a good place that is affordable. And I have a relationship with the Arts Hub, and they would love something like that, where you could have different musicians, bands playing throughout the lobby. You know Arts Hub, right?
Are you talking about up north south or North Public Road area next, like right before the stoplight?
I'm talking about courtesy. Talking about across from the big church, basically.
Yeah. Okay. That was, I keep seeing that when I drive through to Jack's to get chicken food.
Yeah.
Chicken feed, and I'm like, I've always meant to look it up. Yeah. No, I think it'd be cool. We should do that. Yeah. Well, just out of curiosity, since this is kind of like a community-based program too, like what kind of, I didn't know, you were saying you wrote a grant for Lafayette. Like what kind of stuff do you do in the town outside of the film fest and stuff?
Well, we did a program at Arts Hub last year called Coffee Fest. And, when you apply for a City of Lafayette grant, you have to have it take place in Lafayette.
Makes sense.
So I applied for a chocolate program.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But, we could think about this, about whether you want just like an event or you want a series.
Yeah, I kind of envision I don't really know yet, to be honest. Like, part of me is like, it'd be cool to have like an ongoing, like maybe there's once a month thing. Like the place is designated like, hey, this could be like the bluegrass place that has like a jazz. I don't know yet. I also think the importance of like, what are we doing for kids that are like your high school kids that are into arts-based stuff, like how to put on workshops. Maybe the Can and Mine coffee shop doesn't have to pay for it, but and you get a grant to bring in a professional singer-songwriter who does a singer-songwriting workshop, but also explains like, hey, if this is the path you're looking to take, here, there's also like how to do it. So it's not just like, here's how you write songs, but like I'm always trying to figure out like how to like educate people, because if you want to do arts, there's also, you also have to think about the business side of things. Yep. Because if you want to do something to make a living, you really got to think about how to. And it's an interesting thing, because here you have all these creative people, who some people are like anti-business and anti-this, but they don't. But I always think, well, you have this creative brain. Really, the part of it's just thinking outside the box, and like how do you use that part of your brain that you use to create your art? How do you also use that to look at things differently and to figure out how to make things work for you also business-wise, Because if you really want to make a living, especially in this area, it's so expensive. Denver, Boulder, Lafayette even. So I'm trying to think about a lot of stuff like that too. Like how do you bring in like people who are successful at what they're doing, like workshops, but also make it accessible so people can go,
Well, I think that, you're probably a good example of how to have music in your life and, actually on an ongoing basis and still make some money, but it's really hard to like be a professional artist, right? So often the question is, how do I actually have a job and I have also music in my life or art in my life, or how do I put those things together?
I think if you stay single and don't have kids, it's really the only thing I can come up with right now, because you can just do whatever you want to. Yeah, and I guess I think too about people who want to try to pursue things full time too. Like I feel grateful I love my day job as a middle school counselor. I get to like do all this cool like it pretty much funds everything though for me, and it gives me the ability to play music I want to play and not have to like just take every gig, because my basic financial needs are met. So the other stuff, it still supplements, because I'm still working public education, so it's not like I'm out there killing it financially. So it kind of helps with everything. But then like something like this, I'll never make any money off of this. This is like me trying to give back to the community. Like you're super cool. You got this great festival you've put together. Like how do you get the word out? And there's like a lot of people doing cool things. So this is more for that. But yeah, I think we could definitely talk about that stuff.
Sure.
And then well, I'm thinking that we can segue into the next part of the program. We'll take a look. I made some posts on Facebook to see if some people have questions. I know there's a couple out there, so we'll segue into the next bit questions from Facebooklandia. All right, here we are back, episode number 6 of You Can Feel It All Over, in our segment, Questions from Facebooklandia. I'm here with Julia Junn. She is the executive director and founder of the Flatirons Food Film Festival, which will be appearing at different locations in Boulder, Colorado from October 10th through the 13th. If you're interested in more, you can follow the link that's posted below for flatironsfoodfilmfest.org. All right, welcome back. Here we go. So I posted earlier to Lafayette Rocks and my own page about if anyone had any questions for you. This one is from Clint Finley. All right. He asks, what has been your favorite pairing of food or drink with a film to date? And then any wish list for food and film pairings.
Well, it's kind of funny. That could be taken in more than one way. It could be, what's your, your favorite pairing of we ate some of this and then we watched this kind of film. Mm-hmm. Or it could be, what's your favorite kind of cuisine in a film, I think.
Okay.
And when I'm thinking of what was the what was the eating experience that really, was enhanced or informed or whatever from in one of our festivals, I have to say that our street food fair last year killed, and then it was accompanied by Babette's Feast, which is like food porn extraordinaire.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so it was, it was definitely the eating and drinking experience. When I don't know, when actually I think we have so many cuisines over the years in films, and I guess the one that just jumps right to mind, and I don't think it's the only one, but it's just the immediate one, is that we had a whole series of films about fermentation and fermented food in China with Sandor Katz and Mara King, and that was just, it looked like, oh, I want to eat that. Definitely.
Yeah.
So in terms of what I would like in the future, well, a cuisine that is legendary that we don't know much about, which would make it really hard to do. Theoretically, boy, wouldn't that be fun? Is Basque cuisine.
Elaborate a little bit more on that.
So the Basques are not Spanish, but they live in Spain. They have their own Basque country. Bilbao is one of their main cities. And, they're well known for these eating societies.
Nice.
And it's just really, really interesting. Some of the, the most, prominent food in the last 10 years from a gastronomic, fine dining experience have been in Basque country.
Oh, cool. Sweet. That's super cool.
But I don't think there are any Basque restaurants here, so it probably couldn't happen.
Yeah, it'd be kind of, I see you mean, it'd be hard to pair the film, the food together.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool though. But you know what? Now that you just said it and threw it out there, maybe the wheels are in motion.
Well, there's always has to be the movie too, though.
That's right. Yeah. I bet it's out there. You think?
Well,
maybe we need to make one.
Maybe
we can do a GoFundMe page to put it together. Yeah. The next one comes from my man Matthew Gabriel. Which this is a good question. I'm not sure how we can answer it, but how has CGI ruined films? I don't know if we have CGI in food films.
No, I've never seen CGI in a food film. The budgets are small.
Yeah.
And they're not studio
They're like
films.
Independent little films. Yeah. I mean, could CGI enhance food films?
Probably. I mean, it makes things vivid sometimes. So, and food is all about whoa.
Yeah. CGI, I mean, is more like how you use it. It's like any sort of art, it's the creativity and how you use it, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not a huge fan of overdone CGI, but I do think the final fight scene in the latest Godzilla movie was hands down one of my favorite scenes of all time.
Oh.
I was like, this is total CGI, but they destroyed Fenway Park. I mean, it was amazing, and I was totally into it. I was like, this is amazing. So I just think with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh,
is that Uncle Ben from Spider-Man?
Yep.
The next question, the final question, comes from Miss Kelly Ann. What is the organization doing anything to promote education around the importance of organic foods, non-GMO food and such like that.
The festival is always promoting organic food. Whether it's fair or right or not, I have my interest in, I think, organic food and regenerative farming and things on that side of the fence are more interesting than a lot of things in ag. And more interesting, certainly, than conventional farming. I mean, conventional farming, it's interesting insofar as it's off the mark. And so to actually, kind of like eating animals last year, we screened that last year, and it really talked about all the things that we're doing in conventional farming and with animals and how basically, I mean, it's not hard to get the conclusion of it's off the mark. And there are sections in the movie that basically say, hey, we could be doing this differently with organic farming. In fact, here are people who are doing this.
Cool. I like that because it's to me, it seems like you're showing solution-based filmings and different ways to look at it. I can't remember if I went last year or not. I remember one of the films was about pig farming, right? Wasn't it? And they showed like the huge pig factory farm and all.
That was eating animals.
Was that last year?
It was last year.
So
and it was like, confined animals in incredibly small spaces. And yeah, it was.
And then they showed an organic pig farmer, I think, right? Maybe sure. I did go last year.
Yeah.
Because I remember something about that. And I think any of this stuff that like even the soil, I think it was called Soil, right? The film you showed like 3 or 4 years ago.
Symphony of the Soil.
Symphony of the Soil, which is a great title. I love that title. But yeah, I mean, I think all that stuff. I mean, I still remember specifically it was like talking about just even on a wide scale, conventional farming versus organic farming, the benefits that like just nurturing the soil and putting back into it, what it does. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately you do a great job with that stuff. The diversity of all the films that you show, it's like showing food, the Symphony of Soil, like how great is that? Like here's the starting point of where it all comes from, right? Because without that, we're not going to have any of these
nothing gross
world cuisines that we're so used to having and accustomed to, and that we love. It all starts with that. So I take my hat off to you, my invisible hat, because you do a really good job of putting a diverse program together that's around culture of food, where it's coming from, and all these different styles and stuff. And that's killer. That's great.
So speaking of agriculture, organic agriculture, our last day, will be all about agriculture. We're going to have 3 different, events centered around pollinators. So Tim Broad of Highland Honey is Tim. He's going to actually talk about how to attract pollinators to your garden or farm and how to maintain them and sustain them. So, so that your farm or garden would be more productive. So everybody wants their garden to be more productive, right?
Oh, yeah. Shout out to Tim Broad. I got 2 bee packages from Highland Honey in April, and they did a great job, Tim. And this is actually for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're going to have a pollinator fair, too, where there's different organizations that are dedicated to pollinators talking about, being available to talk about, bees and, pollinators and questions and what they're doing. And then we're going to, cap that all off with a film on bees.
When is that Sunday?
Sunday, October 13th.
Sweet, I'm going to go to that.
That's just to start. You know, if you love bees, we got 3 things that have to do with bees, but also farms. So we're going to screen a film that so many people have loved, The Biggest Little Farm. And we're actually going to do it with Eric and Jill Skokin of Black Cat Farm.
Oh, cool.
Black Cat Restaurant, Bramble and Harris Restaurant. And they have their own, farm that's over 300 acres of organic, and biodynamic acreage.
Great.
And so I've known them for all this time, and they definitely had their own journey and saga every year of how are we going to deal with this? Or we want to add that, or very much like Biggest Little Farm. So I think it'll be really interesting to hear their story.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be great.
And then the end of the festival is going to be a dinner at Bramble and Hare with all those vegetables they grow and all these animals they raise 4 courses, and Eric's going to talk and kind of between the courses and talk about what's on the plate. And I think it's a great way to end the festival.
I think so too. Well, I think just to kind of wrap things up, that's great. I'm super excited now. I mean, this is like having you here and hearing all these different things makes me think of like how incredible a person you are. And I mean that sincerely, like how much work. I mean, I do a lot of organizing at school. I do a lot of organizing things in my creative life. But man, what a great little festival you've put together, and like how much time, how much respect, even more respect I have for you now, just thinking about how much time and organization must have went to put this all together. So folks, you do not want to miss this. It's the Flatirons Food Film Festival, October 10th through the 13th. For more information about the different films and activities going on, and for tickets and such, you can go to flatironsfoodfilmfest.org. You'll find those posts, the links to those posts on the YouTube page here, and also on the Facebook page where this episode will be posted. This is Julia. She's here. She's the executive director and the founder of the film festival, and I think it's going to be great. I'm excited. I'm excited too. I'm going to be there. Do you have anything in closing you'd like to say, or?
I think there's something for everyone, and that it's worth going to at least once.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, thanks so much, Julia. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
Yep, it's been a wrap. Good hang.
Bergeron apricot with vanilla jam. 2.5 pounds Bergeron apricots, or 2.25 pounds net. 3 3/4 cups granulated sugar. 7 ounces water. Juice of 1 small lemon. 2 vanilla beans. Rinse the apricots in cold water. Cut them in half to pit them. Mix the apricot sugar, vanilla, beans split lengthwise, and the lemon juice in a ceramic bowl. Cover with a piece of parchment paper. Refrigerate and macerate for an hour. Pour the contents of the bowl into a preserving pan and bring to a simmer. Pour back into the bowl. Cover with a sheet of parchment paper and refrigerate overnight. Next day, pour the preparation into a sieve. Remove the skins from the half-cooked apricots. Bring the collected syrup to a boil in a preserving pan. Skin and continuing cooking on high heat. The syrup will be sufficiently concentrated at 221 degrees Fahrenheit, 105 degrees centigrade on a candy thermometer. Add the apricot halves. Bring to a boil again and cook 5 minutes, stirring gently. Skim carefully. Remove the vanilla beans. They can be used to decorate the outside of your jars. Check the set. Put the jam into jars immediately and seal. The end.